Welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Managing Distance Learning in Early Years. I'm so glad that you're all here. My name is Samia Kazi, and I will be facilitating the webinar today. You know, since I think it's June now, we've been hosting a couple webinars every month, and I really appreciate all of you that have been joining. Today's webinar, I want to just remind you that we will be allowing you to speak up, share your voice, share your concerns, share some questions. So you, of course, if you don't want to speak during the webinar, you can use the chat and the Q&A section. But I do encourage you, at some points, I will be checking out to see if any of you raise your hands. So there's a capability that you can raise your hand. And at some point, I will want to hear from you, hear your thoughts. So just keep that in mind. Get ready, get your mic ready, and get close to the computer or the laptop or the phone or however you're joining us, and just get ready to share some of your thoughts. We are recording this session today, so the recorded webinars will be available on our YouTube channels and on our website as well. Okay, so today is a very exciting topic. How do we manage this beast? How do we manage distance learning in the early years? How do we manage learning, e-learning? So there's many types of distance learning, and today we're going to be talking about distance learning as a whole, but really focusing on using online technologies to manage our early years. So let's get started by getting to know each other. In the chat box, please, I will ask you to introduce yourselves. Tell me about, where you're working, where you're from, where you're joining us from, what your role is at the moment, and why you're interested in this webinar. I also want to remind you that we have this same webinar going to be in Arabic in a couple of hours. So if you've registered for that one. Hello, Zainab. Hello, Erin, Dira, Uruj. Welcome all. Nariman. Hi, Sumaya. Welcome from Abu Dhabi. Mahwash. Hi, Mahwash. Kinda. Hi, Kinda from Dubai. Hi, Suyan. Welcome from Abu Dhabi. Maya. Hala. Joylet. Hi, Joylet. Hi, Nariman. Welcome from Egypt. Talita. Hi, Talita from Adnok Schools. Hi, Rays. Wonderful. Hi, Shalomi, Rana, Dira. Welcome, Dira from Riyadh. Victoria. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Suzanne. Fatima. Sandmali from Abu Dhabi. Okay, great. Okay, keep those coming. Keep introducing yourselves in the chat as we move on. Thank you very much. That gave us, if you're just new joining in, just use the chat. Hi, Neriman. Introduce yourselves in the chat. And just a reminder that get familiar with the button, find the button that says, putting your hand up, as at some point I'm going to be asking some questions. And if you have your hand up, I will allow you to unmute yourself and just share some of your feedback and some of your answers with us during the session. Great. Okay. So if you don't know me already, I am a board member with Arabian Child. I have a master's and a doctorate in early childhood, specifically in quality assurance systems. I'm also a board member at a program called ELLIS. ELLIS is a nonprofit, high quality early childhood program in the United States. And at the moment, I am working as the regional director of an organization called Childhood Education International. They're in partnership with UNESCO. They're based in DC, and I'm the regional director for the Middle East region. And I'm so excited to be holding this webinar today. If you don't know Arabian Child already, we've been 10 years, over 10 years out of the Middle East. We're an accredited training center. We have over 90 plus training programs. And we now have a state-of-the-art online learning platform where we have the ability to take, for our students to take either self-paced learning or instructor-led virtual learning as well in a range of programs. So whether it's short courses, that are under 4 hours. We have like master courses which are up to like 15 hours. Then we have vocational certificates, which may be from anywhere between 2 weeks to 6 months. Then we have diploma level programs, which take about 1 to 2 years, and from a range of different awarding bodies around the world. Okay, so you've already gotten familiar with the chat box. The Q&A is really for specific questions about any of our, anything that we mentioned today, or if you have questions about any of our programs, so put them in the Q&A, and the chat box is just to share your feedback, share some of the answers to some of the questions that I'm going to be asking you today. So we all know the staggering effect of COVID, right, on education. Since March, there has been much more than 1.3 billion learners around the world that have been affected by the school closures. And I know that once, when it was closing first in March, we were all thinking, oh, it's going to be a few weeks, then we're going to be back to normal. Little did we know that there was no going back to normal, and there is no going back to normal. Even after this is all is over, this is going to really, and has fundamentally changed the way we work, changed the way we educate. It's really changed the way we live as well. So that is something that we are kind of getting into grasp with, right? And especially when it comes to educating such young children, when we were first told that, oh, we're going to do kindergarten and training, and we're going to resume our classes online, and we were like, what? Some of us thought that's not possible. How am I going to keep my children focused and engaged online, right? And whereas, the reality was that this was happening, right? So probably I myself have 4 kids, and in the beginning, when especially my young children who are in kindergarten and nursery, I have teenagers as well. So the teenagers, they were resuming their sessions online, and they were like, oh, this is fun, we don't have to get up early in the morning to take the bus or take the car to go to school. We just have to kind of make it up and be, you know, be in our uniform or be in our suitable clothing from the waist up, just so that we're in our Zoom sessions, right? And taking, but for the young ones, this was happening, right? So my young children, I mean, they're, of course, they don't want anything to do sitting in front of the computer, watching the Zoom sessions or watching the online sessions that teachers have really are trying their best to keep the children engaged. But still, one of these two situations is happening, isn't that right? So for a couple months after March, let's say probably around June or July, I said, "Oh, let me try some of these online sessions for my kindergartner." Right. So I signed up for a teacher who was doing 40 minutes 3 times a week on math for kindergartners. So he was, it was a male teacher, and he was specifically targeting for boys. And it was, the whole math session was about using Hot Wheel cars. So if you don't have little boys, then Hot Wheel cars, or if you haven't worked with little boys, then Hot Wheel cars are little tiny cars with, toy cars that all boys and many children are crazy about for, so using that, he was having these math sessions. Counting the cars, doing comparisons, doing sorting, comparing all sorts of different math skills. So to tell you the truth, I mean, probably I can see. I mean, this teacher went to full-on effort to prepare the setup, prepare all the cameras. So there was a camera on the teacher, the camera on the cars, the camera on the whiteboard. There was a lot of effort going around to be prepared for this session. And I would say for fairness, there was about 50% engagement. Now, compared to little boys with humongous amounts of energy, that was a progress. That was a good achievement in my opinion, right? Compared to just having a one-way online or Zoom session. But what's interesting about it is that there's a lot of other things that that one can prepare for. First of all, this whole session, even though me as a parent wasn't seen by the teacher, and I want you to think about this. All parents are always watching. So even though they're not in the camera, they are around their children. They're watching you interact with the child. So there's a lot of going to be there. There's a lot of indirect evaluation and judgment happening, and there's a lot of opportunity to build. Because even if you don't see the parents around, they are around because primarily so that they can manage the mute unmute, right? So I heard one parent call herself as the chief mute unmute officer, the chief mute and unmute officer in charge of managing the mute and unmute for her children, because even though some kids know how to do it, they seldom do it on time, don't they? So there's that whole aspect of that. You're not only now managing or interacting with the child, you are now by force kind of interacting and with the whole family who is in and around your session. So that's why not only is it important to, and the child is inside this community, the child, he or she is in this home, in this environment. So now it's, as teachers, it's up to us not only to plan our interaction, just my planning as a teacher with the child. It's our role now to plan for this child within this environment. So it's our role to plan with this child, knowing that these adults are around, knowing what situation the child is in at home. So if we don't think about and plan for the child within this new situation, it will just become, one of these situations that is in front of us right now. So using the chat, can you think about what are the elements that we need now? What are the most important? If I made you pick only two of these five, which two would you pick? What are the most important elements to help us make this new distance online learning for young children work? So what are the two things? And you can just put in the chat which number. So you can put, 1 and 5, 2 and 4, whatever two numbers you think. So is it qualifications and the training that the teacher has? Is it the experience that the teacher has? Is it how tech savvy? Number 4 is the ability for the teacher to plan. Is it 5, knowing how children develop, how they learn, how they feel, and being really sensitive to how the child is engaging. So which one of those? Okay, wow. So a lot of you are choosing a combination of 3 and 5, 2 and 5, but I see that, yep. So Victoria, you said 5, and then, yep, and then you said no, 2 also. So a lot of you are saying that 5 is kind of the common denominator for all the choices. Yeah, Fatima, 3 is important too. Farzana, 3 is important too. Yeah. And Joylet is saying the ability to plan as well. Yeah. So I know this was kind of a tricky question. This was difficult to narrow down which of these two would be most important. But I think that I really like that most of you are choosing 5. I would definitely agree with that as being one of the most important, knowing how children develop. And I think that once, if you have a good qualification and a good training, I mean, you know that really well, right? So teachers already, if you've chosen the profession to work with young children, you already have this natural gut feeling towards what children like and what they don't like, right? But then when you have your professional qualification and training, you kind of solidify that and you get so much more confident in your techniques and your strategies, and you understand why those gut feelings that you had are the way they are, right? So that qualification and trainings that you get solidify and give purpose and give clarity to what you're doing with children. So I think that 1 and 5 kind of go together. And some of you are saying with this new online learning, some tech savviness is required. Yeah, you're right. So remember the example I was giving you, that the online math sessions that my son was taking, the teacher had several cameras set up. So one camera was on the Hot Wheel cars, another camera was on him, and the third camera was on a little whiteboard where he was doing, and he was managing all these 3 cameras, as well as interacting with his 3 groups. Now, us not being, comfortable with technology, that makes it quite challenging for us to manage these kinds of sessions. So, do you think that we can teach preschool children remotely? I mean, is this possible. And it's not a yes, it's a yeah. Yes, we can do it. Or nope, we can't do it. Farina is like, we did it. Like, yes, it wasn't possible, but we did it. Erin is saying, but it's age dependent. Yes. Fatima is saying, but it's still challenging. I mean, you're doing it, but it's still challenging. It is so hard. Talita, yes, we can, but it's hard, and we are doing it. Victoria, depends on the age. Yes. Fatima is like, yes, but it's difficult to let them focus, of course. And you're saying yes, but it's hard and we're trying. See how much that's why I love teachers so much. It's hard, but you keep trying anyway. And Suyin is saying it depends on the family. Yes, it depends on family input as well. Excellent planning and parent support. Yes, Yulia, thank you. With the support of the parents and teachers' qualifications to help you engage children. Yes, Sendamil, thank you. Sendamali, thank you. Alhamdulillah, we're finding different interactive ways to cater to their needs. Wonderful. Shagufta, thank you. Okay, so I want to tell you that today's session is kind of broken up into two. So today we're going to be talking about how do you do the management of it. So we're going to talk about a few strategies to help you prepare for managing and kind of preparing for good distance education for young children. We have another session coming up in a few weeks, how to actually, once you've managed it, once you've planned for it, then once you are with the children and when you're there live with the children, what are some of the strategies to keep them engaged? So there are two very different sessions. So we hope that we'll share some useful ideas for you today and at our next webinar. So first, right? First of all, we talked about this in a slide before this when we talked about how important it is being tech savvy and having the right qualifications. We need to determine what skills and abilities we need as teachers in order to help us with distance education, right? And I know that you've already started doing distance education and online learning for kids. So right now, it feels like we're trying to build the build the airplane as we fly it, right? We're building the plane as we fly it, but that's okay. It's not, it's still a process. It's still a process that we are starting to get familiar with, right? You've started this new, it's like a new exercise routine. I mean, you're going to develop your skills as you continue with this new experience that you're doing. So I want you to really sit down with yourself and reflect and take out some papers and pens and Post-its and write down some of the areas that you want to improve with. Do you need to take some more sessions to understand what you could do with your platform that you're using to facilitate? Do you need to get, whatever skill it is, you need to do this reflection. And it's not, even if you've already started, it's still not too late to sit back and reflect on some of the skills that you need to develop. So as I've talked about this, what are some of the things that have popped into your mind right now? What are some of the skills or abilities that you need help with, that you need to develop further for yourself to be able to manage this? Think about that and write it in the chat. Do you need to get more, is it tech savvy skills? Do you want to find out how to do some tips and tricks with Zoom? Do you need to, what kind of skills do you want to develop right now? You'll notice that in many of the webinars that you will have with me, I mean, I really appreciate moments of silence. So when we are silent, it's exactly when our brains are firing, right? Our brains are firing, we're thinking, we're having this deep reflection. So these moments are really good, and it will give you some time to think. So that's a good thing. So what kind of platforms are you using other than let's say Zoom? Okay, so Erin, you need some more help with planning, confidence and technical abilities, right? Microsoft Teams, good, excellent. Word and Zoom, and that's what you're using, yeah. Sometimes when you're in the midst of actually conducting these sessions, and because many of you are saying you've already started using them, it gets very difficult to stop, reflect on, wait a minute, these are things that I need to go back, and these are things that I need to develop on. So yeah, so you want to develop your activity, you will need more Microsoft Team, technical planning skills. So Talita is using Teams, Flipgrid, Padlet, Boom Cards. My goodness. So Indirakshi, building initial connection on screen with children or young children. Yeah. Indirakshi, we're going to talk about engaging children during the live sessions more in our next webinar, but thank you for mentioning that. I hope you come to the next one too. Active Inspire flip chart to display things, not just PowerPoint, right? So Yulia, to do valuable assessment of kids' learning, how they're developing online, collecting evidence, absolutely. Thank you, that is amazing. So the second is that how well do you know how children learn at this age? So I know that a lot of the times, this goes back to, you've identified when I was showing you the most important components on how to make online and distance education work. Probably most of you selected number 5, and that was knowing how children develop. Even though children are at a distance from you does not mean that they develop differently. Even though they are you are interacting with them through Zoom or through whatever platform that you're using to manage this learning, it does not change how they learn. Children are still developing and learning, and still need access to all of those different experiences. So this is a really fundamental thing. So it's not going to be a new rocket science on understanding that children are going to learn and develop, differently. We just need to use technology in order to support. Still, it needs to be able to, in order to support this. So we'll talk a little bit about this as well. So third is understanding different types of play. So we know that there's, if you've attended early childhood, any early childhood qualifications or certifications, we always talk about the importance of play, right? And that we understanding that there's unoccupied play, right? Solitary play, onlooker play, there's parallel play, there's associative play and cooperative play, right? So if you reflect now or after this session, I really want you to think about how you can incorporate all of these different kinds of play when you're planning for your sessions. So, when you're planning for the distance education for your children, what kind of unoccupied play? I mean, mostly if I ask you when they're with you on the sessions online or when you're doing your live sessions with these kids, you can very easily probably predict that it will be what kind of play. Which one of these would that be? If they're just kind of watching your sessions or watching your live sessions. So Farina, you think that it's solitary? Yeah, it could be solitary, but which one looks a little bit closer to a child kind of watching? Shalomi, yeah, onlooker, yeah. So that is, yes, Serwat, yes. So right now, the current situation there is mostly onlooker play. Fatima, you're saying a mix of them, so that's great. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. So how you can, but during the live sessions, I would say the majority of it is an onlooker type of play, right? And that's okay. That doesn't mean that we don't need that kind of play. Any good, planning that you do for early childhood learning does contain or does consist of all of these different kinds of play. So when you used to plan your morning, circle time events, or when you did when you brought in a new show and tell, when children are doing show and tell, all of those are examples of onlooker play. So it doesn't mean that it's not important or not effective. It's our job now to continue, and it was before too. So now it's our job to continue to think about how we can create opportunities for all these different kinds of play. And think about, like I said a minute ago, think about all the activities that children used to do in circle time and in small groups, right? Because, and again, that will make it a little bit more easier for you when you're trying to plan for these kind of sessions. So, and remember, I was telling you that how important it is to kind of understand the new classroom that the child is in. Remember the example where I gave you about my children doing the online sessions, even though the parents weren't inside, the viewpoint of the teacher and the camera, the parents were watching. And the child is no longer in the classroom with you. The child is in this new classroom environment. So we now have to understand what this environment is. We can't plan for activities without getting to know the environment, the new environment that the child is in now. So whether that happens through phone calls, through sessions with the family themselves, we now have to get to know what environment the child is in. What resources do they have access to? What do they have at their home? What resources can they make? How much time do they have to dedicate? I was giving you the example of the parent who called herself the chief mute and unmute officer, right? So she wasn't in the screen and the mom was just sitting beside the child and just in charge of the mouse muting and unmuting, right, for the child. So getting to know the situation of the family, spending time with the adult who is supporting the child is very, very important, and is now part of our new. We used to talk about how important partnerships were with families before, but my goodness, that taken a turn right now, isn't it? So it's the time that we spend to kind of with this new assistant teacher of ours, which is the family or the adult that's with the child at home, getting to know them, supporting them, encouraging them, getting to know what their capabilities are, what their time limits are, what they can and cannot do, right? What other things they have around the house. Do they have access to what kind of toys they have? Can they make things? Can they pick things up that you're providing them? Can they, so all of that continuous conversation will now have to take in, happen in parallel to the planning that you're doing for the child. And then all of that kind of pulls together to make your activity plans. So understanding first, this new environment of the child. And I want to, why I keep bringing you back to the new environment of the child is because and remember I told you in the beginning that my background is in quality assurance for early childhood learning. So if we were to kind of select the pillars, the most important pillars that translate into quality quality learning, it would be the teacher, of course, the environment, and the relationship that you have with the child and the parents. So if I could summarize the most important, and guess what? The environment, if you're managing distance learning, the environment is no longer the classroom. The environment is this new environment, not through just the live sessions, the online session. The environment is where the child is now spending their time during the day, during the morning, during the time of their learning. So we now have to have we have now our learning environment is extending to these new environments all over the place. So if we had one classroom environment before with 18 children, we now have 18 learning environments with one child in each of those environments. So I'm trying to help you to kind of extend your peripheral to include thinking about how you can influence those environments. Is it something that you can, is it material that you can somehow share with them? Is it some things that you can help them to prepare, help them to provide, help them to borrow? So it is planning for those environments that will make a major, major difference in helping you manage successful and quality distance education. So the environment is one pillar. And of course, we talked about you, the teacher, being the next pillar. And the third pillar is that your ability to manage your relationship with the adults that are supporting the child. So whether it's the parents, whoever the adults are, your relationship with that person and these three pillars put together is going to make your learning experience with the child successful, is going to continue to make you successful at helping that child reach their maximum potential, fullest learning experience. So, of course, when you're planning, similarly to how you were thinking about having all different kinds of play, how to incorporate my collaborative, my onlooker, my solitary, all those different kinds of play. But also we need to make sure that our activity plans include all of the different areas of learning. So even though we're doing distance learning, your activity plans still have to include all of the different areas of learning: reading and writing, physical development, social emotional learning, language, and you might call these or categorize these differently. It depends on what curriculum framework you're using, what approach you're using, but they are probably the same categorized in a different way. So if you are using the EYFS, the UK framework, the early years foundation stage, then you'll have these similar to these. You might have different ones depending on what curriculum framework that you're following. But your activity planning still has to be inclusive of all of these. Okay, so how do I actually do the activity planning? So first, of course, first you are following, you need to think about what curriculum you're using, what approach that will kind of guide what categories of the learning areas that you need to include. And then you're thinking about the developmental needs of those children. So similarly, what you were doing in the classroom, you were thinking about where your child is now and what experience you can do to help them go to the next step. So if you have a really strong, comprehensive curriculum, then it will tell you, how to create or what kind of experiences that your child needs to kind of go to the next level of learning, right? So you need to understand where the child is. And I think one of you in the chat, Yulia, you were asking about assessment. And I want to commend you for that, because doing assessment continues, and doing observation and assessment is very important in order for you to find out where your child is and where they need to be. So that's a great idea. I think we can probably do a whole webinar on that, on how to do high quality and good observation and assessment through distance education. But if you think about the three pillars, right? The three pillars that I've been talking about so far is you, the teacher, the environment, and then your relationship with the parents. So your ability to do the assessment and observation is going to be successful if you are able to have a fantastic relationship with the adults that are caring for the child. So we can talk, we can dedicate a whole webinar to that, but I want to recommend to you that there are specific assessment tools that can be carried out by parents. They may not be able to use your traditional curriculum assessment tools, but there are specific tools that are actually targeted for and used by parents to help them kind of assess where their children are. And I think that there are many different tools available, and there are different reasons for using them. But one tool that I've seen teachers use, especially now, is something a little bit not traditionally used for learning, but it's called Ages and Stages. So it's called the Ages and Stages Questionnaire, so ASQ tool. And I'm happy to, we can send you the link for that after the webinar. That tool is, there's different assessments for each age level. And I think that is traditionally, that tool is used to identify if children they're at risk for any developmental delays, right? That's how it was traditionally used. But I've seen teachers use that in this new situation that we have, because those questionnaires and those assessment tools are designed in a way for parents to use them. So I think in order for us to do this step 2, which is understanding what developmental needs the child has, I would recommend going with a tool that you can successfully have, you can successfully work with a parent to help you do that. And you do need some, part of the tool is carried out by the parent, and part of it is kind of managed by you, the supervisor or the teacher or the lead teacher. We can, if you want, we can maybe talk about that a little more at the end, if we have a few minutes at the end of the session. And we're more than happy to dedicate a whole webinar to how to do that. And the third was thinking about the environment, the resources, the tool that you can creatively utilize. So that's not only understanding what tools that you can use, but also what tools that you can share with the parents and what with the family and what tools they have access to. So things maybe that they can make, things that they can borrow, or things that they can get. And then also, I've seen some teachers make some resources available and share them physically. It is the whole, I want to share this example with you. The whole process of, as a family, actually going to pick up a little Ziploc bag or plastic bag full of resources from you to help them support with the learning. This, don't underestimate this, even this can be part of an activity, right? So if let's say for example, you prepare a small plastic bag with some, a little kit that the kids will need for that week, right? So then you ask the parents maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks to come by, and they're picking this little activity bag or this activity kit from a specific location. So I want you to really consciously think about this whole journey. So the learning doesn't start when you actually have the kit and when you have all of the kit open. The learning starts when the parent has a conversation with the child. Is like, oh, we're about to go to the so-and-so school to pick up our kit. Here's a conversation that you can have. So you are kind of talking with the parents to tell them, here's a conversation that we can have, right, with the child when you're explaining to them it's time for our weekly or monthly visit to pick up our kit. Here's the conversation that you can have in the car on your way there. Here's the conversation that you can have on your way back. This whole journey is part of your activity. This whole journey is part of your activity plan. You've planned this activity. Your activity doesn't start when they open the kit. Your activity starts when the parents share news with their kids and then do this together. This is an opportunity that we can spend time together. We're actually doing this together. And don't underestimate the enjoyment that the children have in doing that part of the journey itself. So I want you to use every moment. Every moment is a window of opportunity. And I want you to think about that consciously. And then, you know what? We are celebrating the adults who are supporting this. So the adults that are taking the child to pick up your kit, right? That when you acknowledge that, when you tell them, oh, you're part of this learning, thank you for making this learning, having these conversations, taking the child, dedicating your time, guess what? That your new assistant at home is appreciated, they're motivated, and now they are more engaged. So now when the parent is more engaged, guess what? You're more successful. So think about that. Think about every window of opportunity that you can have to make learning successful. And it does not have to all be, on your own shoulders during your own time. You can plan things that they can do in the car. You can plan for conversations they can have at the dinner table. You can plan for a story that they can do at bedtime, and then appreciate it. Find ways. Even driving to and from picking up this kit, appreciate every involvement that the parent has with the child. Appreciate that and support that relationship, right? So that will, that's a really, really important tip. Okay, so we don't want this to happen, right? So that we've been talking a lot about this is really working in partnership with the parent. So I want to save a few moments for questions, and just a few reminders that if you're doing any, live virtual sessions, I was telling you an example that earlier with the Hot Wheels, the math with Hot Wheels session that my kindergartner was taking over the summer. They never lasted over 40 minutes. And I think that I would say anywhere between 30 to 40, depending again on their age, would be a good number. And then also really working with the parents to make sure that they have the tools to help them make that learning interactive. So the examples that I was giving you, learning math with the Hot Wheels cars. So an example would be that they made sure that we had the Hot Wheels, we had access to actual Hot Wheels cars at home so that the children could actually interact during the session. So making sure that they have the tools and equipment is something that I think I talked about enough today. And then also making sure that we have small groups. So preferably it's anywhere between 6 to 8 children. Less would be ideal, but if possible, if we can have anywhere between 6 to 8 children, this is great. Okay, so now I am going to take some questions. So what I want you to do is you have the ability to kind of raise your hand if you wanted to speak up and share your voice, share maybe a successful idea that you tried. Or if you don't want to speak, you can just put your questions in the chat, but I would love to hear from you. So if I'm going to ask our moderator today, Zubina, if there's a way for our learners, our attendees today to kind of speak up, share some of their ideas, that would be great. If not, I'm really excited to hear some of your questions or some of your feedback in the chat as well.